Has the response to this season and the calamities on offense and elsewhere and the coaching failings, have you been pleased with the response? We see NIL, we see recruiting headed in a big direction. Are you satisfied?
I am, because what it shows is that Michigan, if Sharon Moore fails here, it's just going to be because he cannot do the job. That Michigan, I told you before, even the Bryce Underwood stuff, that Michigan had already allocated and budgeted. It was going to spend an Ohio State level of money. We're going to be the Ole Miss of this year's transfer portal. Mark my words. That was going to happen even before the Bryce Underwood thing. And the Bryce Underwood thing's a unique thing. That's one unique donor, not Dave Portnoy. That's one unique donor who's been brought forth because we're dealing with essentially the greatest quarterback recruit the state's produced since Drew Henson. He's way ahead of Dante Moore from even a few years ago, or CJ Carr. Bud Elliott at 24/7 Sports says Bryce Underwood's the closest thing to Cam Newton he has seen since Cam Newton. I talked to a guy Saturday night, a former college football assistant coach with a lot of experience scouting players and high school recruiting and breaking down high school recruiting film. He told me Bryce Underwood was a LeBron James of college football in terms of where he's at 17 years old and where LeBron James was. So I think that's just a unique situation. So sometimes you're seeing some Michigan media, some Michigan fans, well, we should be spending that money elsewhere. This is a separate fund. This is Michigan, guys. They're not short of donors. We're good. Okay, I don't know if you guys have been on campus, in the last 55 years, but they're not going through couch cushions for change. They're going to be all right. They're going to be okay. They got this. Right? So this is a unique situation where an ancillary donor was brought in specifically for the intent purposes of putting together the kind of deal that Bryce Underwood simply cannot say no to. And I don't believe that he will. And I've been saying for 2 weeks, and I'm going to maintain this until signing day, I need to see a signature of Bryce Underwood and his family on a letter of intent to Brian Kelly, not taking, 8 figures guaranteed up front as an insurance policy. And yes, if Michigan cannot develop him, would he be leaving tens of millions of dollars on the table in the NFL? Yes. But the earliest he can collect anything from the NFL is the summer of 2028. That's a lot of water under the bridge, Mark. That's a lot of times a non-contact Achilles injury could happen, and you're never the same player. That's a lot of practices and games where your spine snaps and you're never the same player. I will believe they're turning down 8 guaranteed figures up front. I'm going to need to see a signature on an LOI before I believe that, because I don't believe they will. I don't. I think he'll end up at Michigan. And I think that's what your school did this last offseason with guys like Caleb Downs. Those are the opening salvos across the bow of the SEC. And this is something I think your audience really needs to understand about what bringing this stuff above board is going to do in leveling the playing field. Because the reason why the SEC did such a great job buying players before is because the SEC, and if you work in Republican Party politics like I do, you encounter a lot of the Southern donor base. And there's a reason why Democrats always have more money than Republicans, because their donor bases come from land grant schools like Michigan and Ohio State, where they're captains of industries and tycoons. And down south, where the Republican donor base is, it's guys that are very wealthy, but it's because they own like 50 car lots. You see what I'm saying? Or one fast food chain. It's not the same thing. It's just not. And so when you can get a great quarterback for $250K and the Big Ten schools aren't bidding anything, that's a lot of money, right? You're the one paying top. But what happens now if it's 10 million? The state of Louisiana is broke, has been for several years. They don't have that kind of cash. If schools like yours and mine truly, as yours did this, proved this last portal season, if we decided, all right, if those are the rules, I've got an account. They can't. Those schools down south cannot compete with the resources up here. They can't. Not even close. Now they're going to still have the inherent advantage of those players are parochial to their era or their area and local, and they'll have some inherent advantage for that. But the idea that Georgia and Alabama every year now and are getting 9 5-stars and Michigan's not going to maybe get one, that era is done. That era is not happening anymore. And Bryce Underwood is the first salvo. I mean, we just flipped a kid from Georgia, one of the top corner recruits in the country, Shamari Earls. That would have been unthinkable even 2 or 3 years ago. Hell, last year that would have been unthinkable. Okay, so whether it's you guys rating, Alabama's roster for 5 stars, or what we're doing right now to Georgia and now LSU, the game is changing now that this stuff is above board, and now the stigma in our part of the country of doing this is totally removed now. Okay. We always viewed your school as the closest thing to the SEC because maybe guys got to take internet classes and drive a car and get a tattoo. That's nothing compared to what's been going on down south for the last 30 years. Nothing. Well, they wanted a market-based economy for labor. We're going to teach them a thing or two about market-based economies because they cannot compete with the capacity that we can bring to the table. And it'll be fascinating to see what that ultimately does. Now, you still have to be able to coach these kids, right? And I also think Michigan will end up with a very big name offensive coordinator when this is all said and done as well. But I don't know that he can lead a program. We'll find out. But we're going to find out because Michigan is now going to leverage every one of its internal systemic resources to give him every advantage to doing so that he does not Brady Hoke on us. And then if he still does, that's on him. And then another coach will know, well, hell, man, if I know how to do this job and Michigan's out there spending that kind of money, let's go win. So it's a no-lose scenario. We'll find out that we'll either find out if Sharon Moore can lead a program or we just advertise it to the country. We're open for business. We'll get it. Then we'll get a great coach. I'm not worried about it one way or the other.